My name's Lieutenant Jack Tanner, and yeah, I'm a thief. Not your regular street-level punk, though. My crew deals in high-stakes, interstellar espionage, the kind involving spaceships, laser grids, and those six-legged, hissing freaks we politely call the Collective. See, the Collective showed up 50 years ago. Looked like giant armored praying mantises, their ships like polished obsidian knives cutting through the sky. Humanity got one taste of those plasma cannons and we learned fast, don't mess with the oversized bugs. They weren't here to exterminate us, thank God. Instead, it was more like a farmer inspecting a pen of unruly livestock. Set down some rules, carved up Earth amongst themselves like territories, and started tinkering. We became their galactic science project. Most people adapted. Learned their clicking language, followed their tech restrictions, traded in quotas for a semblance of peace. A good chunk of us went the full collaboration route, scientists surrendering their secrets, the megacore smelling the credits roll in. Me? I never trusted the things. You can't reason with an insect, and you can't negotiate with something that sees you as lunch if things go south. My crew, well, we were ex-military rejects, black ops outcasts, and a few brilliant, borderline insane engineers the brass deemed unmanageable. We were humanity's dirty little secret tucked away in the shadows of the lunar base. We had two goals. 1. Steal any bit of collective tech to level the playing field. And 2. Find out what the hell they were really digging for down on Earth. It wasn't just about the shiny minerals, they were hunting for something specific, something buried deep. Whatever it was, it had them jumpy. Our chance came 15 years into the occupation. One drunken night in a seedy spaceport bar, the fact we had those was a minor miracle, we got lucky. Overheard a pair of drunk collective technicians squabbling. Seemed they lost a set of classified blueprints, something so hush-hush their superiors were buzzing with fury. Turns out drunken bugs aren't much better at keeping secrets than drunken humans. They spilled the beans. The plans weren't for a new weapon. They were for a shield. An energy barrier of a scale never seen before. That wasn't just defense, it was isolation. The Collective had found whatever they'd been seeking on Earth, and were about to seal it off. That flipped a switch in my head. Whatever they wanted so badly, humanity needed it worse. My crew's reaction? Well, let's just say the words reckless and idiotic were thrown around. Sarah, our chief engineer, a woman so brilliant she made my brain hurt, simply started drawing sketches on a napkin. Half an hour later we had the outline of a plan crazy enough it just might work. Our first task, figure out where the blueprints ended up. Our best bet was the Collective's primary regional headquarters in the heart of what used to be called Siberia. Now it was Zone Theta, an ugly sprawl of alien architecture rising from the permanent ice. Think of it as their embassy, administration hub, and military barracks all blended into one monstrosity. Oh, and guarded to the armored teeth. That became Sarah's problem. We'd spent a decade salvaging bits of collective tech, reverse engineering the heck out of it. Sarah built us what she called scramblers. Essentially little gizmos the size of a coin that could play havoc with their tech for a short period. Not long enough for a firefight, but long enough to slip a ghost through the cracks of their security. That ghost was me. The suit we built was a Frankenstein of stolen collective tech and Sarah's own genius. It was a mimic suit, siphoning the energy off their systems to project a rudimentary biosignature. Made me seem like one of them for a narrow window of time. The bugs relied more on scent and heat signatures anyway, so with a bit of chemical trickery I'd smell like a grumpy low-level administrator bug, and the suit would regulate my body temperature to match. It was a long shot, but all we ever dealt in were long shots. They never even knew what hit them. I was in and out of that headquarters in the time it took them to order lunch. Turns out the Collective has a taste for fermented algae paste, which about explains their lousy tempers. Anyway, the blueprints were tucked in the office of their regional commander, a nasty piece of work with too many legs and a voice like crushed gravel. His safe was ridiculous, a vault within a vault, clearly meant for whatever secret they were digging up. I'd have loved to crack it, but I'd long ago learned not to overstay my welcome with the bugs. Instead, I slipped a scanner Sarah had built into a crack in the wall. It would slowly, painfully, image the entire contents onto a microchip for her to decipher back at base. It'd take weeks, but hey, we were used to playing the long game. Then, that ever-present, gut-churning feeling that whispers you're being watched kicked in. There, in the doorway, was one of their elite guards. All black shiny armor, 4 glowing eyes, and a blaster big enough to turn me into a cinder. Turns out, the bugs aren't so good at spotting a human when they're expecting another bug. The mimic suit was holding steady, but that was only going to last so long. The guard clicked some sort of alarm code I didn't understand, a high-pitched series of chitters that sent a shiver down my spine. My choices were limited: bolt or bluff. Given what my crew was risking to get me in here, bolting was pretty low on the list. Bluffing, on the other hand, well, we'd always been good at improvisation. I whipped out my translator, a clunky old thing that always took too long to boot up, and started tapping frantically. Then I pointed to the commander's safe with as much irritation as I could fake, chittering out the equivalent of broken lock, urgent data, need new code. The guard tilted its head, mandibles twitching in that unsettling way they do. I was basically tap dancing on a minefield. Weeks crept by at the lunar base. Sarah's face became a permanent fixture in the engineering bay, her fingers flying over control panels in a symphony of frustration and muttered curses. The data stream from my scanner was a mess, corrupted and fragmented. She was pulling fragments of blueprints from the mess, blueprints for something as complex as it was massive. Cogs the size of buildings, energy conduits wider than my outstretched arms. It was dawning on the lot of us that this wasn't just about planetary defense. This was domination. Then came the breakthrough. Within the chaos of code, Sarah unearthed a reference point, coordinates etched on a single data segment that hadn't been scrambled by the collective's countermeasures. Numbers corresponding to the Amazon, deep in the heart of what was left of the rainforest. The place the collective had spent decades excavating under the pretense of seeking some rare mineral. They'd lied. It was never about materials, it was about location. Our mysterious object, whatever the hell it was, waited beneath the green canopy. Now, here's the thing about my crew. We weren't saints. We broke laws, bent rules, and had a whole lot of creative interpretations of the word protocol in our job descriptions. But we had lines the collective had stomped over with their shiny exoskeleton boots. This discovery twisted something in us. This wasn't just an arms race anymore, it was about survival. Sarah was first. We weaponize, she said, voice flat. There wasn't a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Pete, our resident demolitions expert and a man with a twisted love for fireworks, merely grinned a toothy smile. Always liked the idea of blowing something big to kingdom come. Marcus, ex-special forces with a stoic exterior belying a surprisingly sharp mind, was next. We turn their shield into a blade. Strike before they finish. His tone was less a suggestion, more a statement of fact. It hit me then, that same steel-cold sensation that had gripped me the day I found those blueprints. This wasn't a heist anymore. We were holding a match to the powder keg, and praying we could control the inferno. My orders wouldn't come from some council, or a scared general hiding on the moon. They came from that feeling gnawing at my gut, fear, desperation, but also a fierce rush of purpose. The crew didn't even need me to say it out loud, the fire was already in their eyes. The Amazon was a gamble. Thick jungle, teeming with God knows what, crawling with collective patrols. They'd be swarming that excavation site like flies on a carcass. Getting anywhere near it unseen would be next to impossible. We needed an edge, a way to punch above our weight. That's where the scramblers Sarah had built came in. Her initial design was for quick in and out sabotage, disrupting power or comms on the fly. My reckless request turned that on its head. See, if you push the scrambler past its safe limits. Well, let's just say the result wasn't so much a disruption as a localized electromagnetic meltdown. Overload a couple of Sarah's babies near a collected power source, and you could bring down their systems for miles around, at least temporarily. It was sloppy, risky, and our escape window would be laughably narrow. But desperation makes for the finest of engineers. Sarah set to work like a woman possessed, reinforcing the housings, tweaking the emitters, her eyes burning with a mix of exhaustion and relentless determination. A week later, she tossed me a metal box the size of my fist, its innocuous exterior hiding a weaponized power surge. "Don't drop them," she muttered. "Unless you plan on vaporizing a small city." I knew better than to joke at a time like this. The plan started to take shape, as reckless and explosive as you'd expect from a crew like mine. We'd drop into the jungle several miles away from the dig site under cover of night. It wouldn't be stealthy, it wouldn't be elegant, but hey, we'd never advertised either of those traits. Our goal? Get close enough to plant those overloaded scramblers near their primary power nexus and blow the whole thing sky high. In the chaos, Marcus, Pete, and I would slip down to the excavation, grab whatever the collective was guarding so fiercely, and hightail it out of there before they got the lights back on. The lunar launch bay was a hive of controlled chaos that night. We'd acquired a collective transport shuttle some years back, a beat-up, clunky thing, but Sarah had worked her magic on it. Now its hodgepodge of alien and human tech hummed beneath my hands as I piloted us into Earth's atmosphere. Atmospheric entry in a jury-rigged bug ship isn't something you ever get used to. The whole thing shook violently enough to rattle my teeth, and Sarah's muttered curses from the back translated to roughly, "Please don't explode, please don't explode." But she'd built it well. We broke through the cloud cover over the Amazon, the rainforest stretching out below us like a vast, dark ocean. Navigation fell to Marcus and his knack for maps. Pinpoint drops under pressure were his specialty, the rest of us were just along for the ride and the ensuing fireworks. On his command, we bailed from the shuttle, the night air rushing past my face as the jungle canopy raced up to meet me. Then the blissful jolt of my parachute, the world slowing back to a somewhat manageable speed. That lasted about 5 minutes until my boots hit the ground with a less than graceful thud. Pete landed beside me, his grin barely visible in the near darkness. "Still got all your limbs attached? Figured the bugs might have taught you how to fly the hard way by now." Marcus was already scanning the perimeter, his movements economical, focused. The man could vanish into thin air if he wanted to, a damn useful skill if you happen to be trespassing in a heavily armed alien compound. Sarah uncoupled herself from her parachute with practiced ease, the pack collapsing seamlessly on her back. "Comms?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Sarah pulled a headset from her pack, fiddling with dials. "Patchy. Too much interference in this overgrown mess." She flicked a switch, a scowl creasing her brow. "Wait. I'm picking something up. Not collective chatter. Music?" Pete snorted. "Bugs got a secret karaoke night we don't know about?" The music grew louder as we moved, not the synthesized hum of collective tech, but a raw, rhythmic thrumming that vibrated in our boots. It resonated deep, primal, echoing off the ancient trees like a heartbeat. We crested a small hill, and the sight hit us like a punch to the gut. The excavation wasn't the clean, surgical operation we expected. The earth was ripped open, a bleeding gash in the rainforest, machinery swarming around the exposed cavern. But it wasn't the collective running the show. Humans. Hundreds of them, ragged and desperate, toiled under the harsh lights rigged above the pit. Some dug, others hauled or laden carts, their movements jerky, almost mindless. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, humans too, bearing the insignia of more than a few corporate conglomerates that we thought had been swallowed by the occupation. And above it all, on a makeshift platform, stood a circle of figures clad in robes, chanting in unison to the beat of thrumming drums. "What the hell?" Pete muttered. Something was wrong. Gut-twistingly wrong. This wasn't just collaboration with the collective, it was closer to worship. Then my eyes landed squarely on the source of the throbbing music. In the heart of the cavern, nestled within the cradle of exposed rock, was an artifact. It pulsed with a sickly green light that seemed to leach the color from everything around it. Its shape was hard to define, shifting and amorphous, the surface rippling with an energy that made my skin crawl. This was the thing the collective had been guarding, the reason for the shield, the lies. Sarah hissed out a curse beside me. "Power readings are off the charts. It's unstable." "Change of plans," I whispered into the mic. "Marcus, Pete. Forget the power nexus. We need to secure that thing, destroy it if we have to." Acknowledgement crackled back, barely audible above the chanting and the thudding drums. My hand found the butt of my blaster, the weapon provided by the brass back when they still trusted us. It felt pitifully inadequate. We had to move. The chanting was reaching a feverish pitch, and the humans in the pit. Their movements were less controlled now, erratic, fueled by some desperate, sickening energy radiating from the artifact. The corporate goons were starting to look uneasy too, their weapons shifting nervously as they eyed the crowd. This whole scene was teetering on the edge of chaos, and we'd just thrown ourselves into the mix. The plan had always relied on surprise, on the collective being blindsided by our tech. Now we were charging headlong into a powder keg armed with a flimsy lighter. "Remember," I hissed, "we grab it, we get out. Don't be heroes." The last part was mostly directed at myself. Bravery and stupidity were separated by a thin line, and I'd tap danced on it for far too long. This time, this had to end. The descent into the pit was a blur of adrenaline and calculated risk. Marcus moved like a ghost, Pete with the controlled violence of a cornered predator. Sarah darted behind us, eyes constantly scanning, muttering calculations about power fluxes and decay patterns. And me? I simply pushed forward, the translator in my ear scrambling the chanting into gibberish, the artifact's sickly pulse hammering against my skull. The crowd parted before us, their vacant eyes tracking our movement, the ragged chanting morphing into something rougher, a guttural growl that echoed in my bones. The artifact loomed, no longer just a relic, but a living, breathing horror show. I could make out flecks within its depths, swirling constellations of light that pulsed in dissonant rhythms. Marcus grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. It's reacting, building up. He was right. The green glow now strobed manically, the air around it warping with bursts of sickly energy. We needed to act, now. I raised my blaster, aiming not at the artifact, but at the makeshift platform holding the chanting robed figures. The first shot cracked like thunder, silencing their hypnotic dirge. The humans below surged, the sound of their countless panic cries a chilling contrast to their earlier stupor. The platform guards, the corporate enforcers, finally turned their attention to us. But instead of panic, instead of even a flicker of surprise, their expressions twisted into something far more unsettling. A grin. They opened fire, not at us, but into the crowd of panicked workers. Chaos reigned. The crowd, moments ago listless and obedient, was now a screaming, panicked wave of flesh tearing itself apart. The pulse from the artifact throbbed in time with the mayhem, growing brighter with each spilled drop of blood. It was feeding. "We've got to shut the thing down," Pete roared over the gunfire, hauling a bulky shape from his pack, one of Sarah's overloaded scramblers. A shot from a guard clipped his shoulder, a burst of red staining his fatigues. He swore viciously, but his hands were steady as he fumbled with the arming switch on the device. The enforcers on the platform were changing too. Their movements, once controlled, now held a frantic edge. Their skin took on an unhealthy sheen, reflecting the artifact's sickly radiance. Marcus was already in motion, a silent blur darting towards the base of the platform. His target was clear, the support beams, their structural integrity already strained under the artifact's chaotic energy. A well-placed demo charge would destabilize the whole thing. Sarah sprinted for the base of the artifact itself, backpack open and a tangle of wires pulled free. The artifact, she gasped over the comms, it's not just a power source, it's a receiver. Some sort of feedback loop. Her words cut off mid-sentence with a startled cry. A robed figure, taller than those on the platform, emerged from the shadows, clutching what looked like a crude control panel. Its face, visible beneath the tattered hood, was twisted into a mask of feverish ecstasy. Not collective, a human who'd succumbed fully to the artifact's twisted influence. The device in its hands flared bright green, and Sarah stumbled, clutching her head with a pained scream. I saw red. I wasn't a killer. Years in the Black Ops had taught me restraint, a scalpel, not a hammer. But this wasn't about orders, about the mission. This was human against an abomination twisting our own kind. I fired at the figure. My blaster wouldn't faze the collective, but against a fanatic driven mad by power and delusion. The control panel shattered, spraying the figure with sparks. It shrieked, not in pain, but in rage. Yet the stumble brought precious seconds. I tackled Sarah, yanking her back from the artifact's growing field of influence. From the corner of my eyes, I saw Pete flinging the scrambler. It arced through the air, landed with a thud right beside the main power conduit feeding the artifact. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the surge. It never came. Instead, there was a strangled click, followed by a hiss of escaping pressure. Pete looked equally confused, then swore and gestured wildly. Backup generator. We'd run out of time. Marcus's charge went off then, the roar momentarily deafening, the platform crumbling in a shower of debris. The artifact rocked precariously, the green pulse now a frantic strobe. The chanting on the platform had ceased, replaced by the desperate snarls and cries of men driven further into madness. They surged over the wreckage towards us. I raised my blaster. My finger squeezed on the trigger. And the weapon was wrenched from my grasp. The impact threw me to the ground. Sarah lay sprawled beside me, not a scratch on her, but her eyes were wide with a terror I'd never seen reflected there. Then I saw why. A tendril of pure, sickly energy snaked from the artifact towards her, reaching, grasping. She screamed, scrambling back, fingers clawing at the ground. I lunged for her, my outstretched hand brushing against the tendril. It pierced through my flesh like a million hot needles, pain so intense the world dimmed to a red-soaked blur. But it was enough, just enough of a distraction. The tendril recoiled, and I hauled Sarah into my arms, rolling away from the artifact's grasping reach. The surge came then. But instead of the electromagnetic blast we had planned, it was a wave of pure, blinding force. The artifact shrieked, not a mechanical sound, but a mournful wail that vibrated in our bones. The platform guards and the robed fanatics writhed, then exploded into dust. Sarah's overloaded scrambler had somehow triggered a catastrophic resonance. The artifact pulsed wildly one final time, its light searing my vision, and then imploded, leaving behind a crater of scorched earth. When my eyesight returned, blurry and tinged with burning afterimages, we were alone. The workers in the pit were gone, incinerated to ash in the blast, or simply spirited away by the collective when the chaos began. The artifact was a smoking ruin, the sickly glow extinguished. Sarah was curled into a ball beside me, whimpering from the lingering effects of the artifact's influence. Pete was the first to stir, helping mark us up. The demolitions expert blinked at me, confusion warring with pain. The hell just happened? No clue, I rasped, feeling a century older. Our mission, once so clear, was now a muddled wreck. We had the blueprints, yes, a fragmented glimpse of the shield's design that proved the collective's intent. But we also had the memory of a pulsating horror, a vision of how even our own species could be weaponized, driven to the brink by a power we couldn't fathom. Sometimes, you steal military tech. Sometimes, it steals you back.